Hi there, I'm Layla.
And I'm Junior.
And welcome to Shut the Door, Have a Seat, your Mad Men podcast.
We're here to guide you through the transformative world of the 1960s and one of the most well-produced shows of all time, Mad Men.
Together, we will be visiting each episode one by one to discuss and examine this captivating series.
So grab yourself an old-fashioned, sit back, and let's get started. Oh,
we're back.
It's been so long since I said that.
Yes, we are back in action. So exciting.
And we do just want to take a minute and thank everyone for your patience and your understanding while we took this break.
Yes, a huge thank you. For those of you who don't know, I recently took on the role of a mom, which is super exciting. And everyone has been really gracious while we've just sort of taken a break to just, for me to basically get my shit together. So it's been really, really good. And we really appreciate everyone.
Yeah, it really means a lot that you guys are still engaging with us on Instagram and on Patreon. Yep. And we've gained followers, which I did not expect. I thought we might lose some just for the lack of activity. So it's been really cool that you guys are still here and we're patiently waiting for us to come back. And it's really nice to be back.
It is so nice to be back. So we're going to go ahead and just jump into what we're going to be covering this episode. So this is actually our season 2 wrap-up episode. And we're going to be discussing the development of each of the main 6 characters and basically our overall impressions of the season as a whole, sharing our favorite scenes, costuming choices, musical selections, and things like that. So we're really excited to get into it. We don't get to do these episodes often, obviously. So it's nice to jump back into something like this.
And to start it off, we're going to give a brief summary of season 2. And by brief, we mean brief. As vague as we usually keep it for our episode summaries. So for the entirety of season 2, while keeping it within the confines of 2 to 3 sentences, we were able to come up with dramatic pause. In season 2 of Mad Men, we take a deeper delve into the characters' lives, interpersonal struggles, and harsh realities, more so than we have seen thus far. All the while, Sterling Cooper is going through a transformation of its own.
It's beautiful. I love it. And with that, we're going to just dive into the character discussion. So this is where we'll start off. And we're going to start off with our leading man, Don. Boy, oh boy. I'm going to go on a bit of a
I'm so
mic
excited.
Grab
please,
for a while.
Please.
So I feel like Don really, in this season, he starts off in a really strong place. He's a committed family man. And, it seems like he's put the majority of his bullshit behind him. But it just doesn't last very long at all, unfortunately. Enter season 2 flame Bobby, who is like where old Don makes his reappearance, I feel. And I think in some ways, Bobby really acts as a sort of validation for Don that what he does is quote unquote normal and not a big deal. And by what he does, I mean his infidelity, because she's very much like him in that way. And things get really messy. And although I do love Bobby as a standalone character, and people might not agree with me on this, but I actually just don't like their affair. I just feel like it's really just cheap, and I just don't like what they bring out in each other. But it happens, and it happens very strong. It comes on very strong. But I love that we finally get to see the relationship with Peggy and Don evolve in this season as well, and get some backstory as to why it's in such a solid place this season. Freddie is basically fired, and when that happens, we get to see the softer side of Don, I feel. And that always wins me over. I could be totally pissed off at Don one second, and as soon as his soft side comes out, I'm like, oh look at him. Yeah. But I feel like it's kind of a bit of a turning point in some ways for him. By this point, he and Betty are already like deep into the turmoil of their shit this season. He's not living at home, and he's really feeling the effects of that on him at this stage. And he almost makes it back to her after they have sex on her old bedroom floor. But, Betty's just she's not having it. And I think that that's what really prompts Don to do the soul searching that he does later on in this season when he goes AWOL, under the cover of a business trip. He just takes off, as we know. But honestly, meeting Anna for me was the highlight for Don's development this season, for me personally. I feel like we finally get to meet this person who's just been such a huge part of his life, his identity, his past, and she's just finally brought into the present. And we get a look at what I consider to be the real Don/Dick when he's with her. And he's just so genuine. He's so open. And it's really just refreshing to see him around someone like Anna who is so open with him, because we're so used to seeing people just like tread on eggshells around Don. It's incredibly refreshing. And I feel like his character development could almost stand alone this season. I know that's kind of a bit of a bold statement, but it goes from, just him being okay, to him just being back to regular Don, to him kind of being like, oh shit, hang on, I need to get it together. So yeah, those are my general thoughts. And I love what he goes through this season, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Well, that was all really beautifully put.
Thank you.
I 100% agree with everything that you said. Although, just to clarify, so when you say you don't like Bobby and Don's affair, do you mean as like a plot point it doesn't quite do it for you, or you mean like on a personal level?
Definitely on a personal level.
Okay.
I just feel like what they bring out in each other is just really tacky, and I think it's necessary for the show, but I just don't, personally, I'm just like, I don't know. It's just, it's not for me.
It's not super comfy. Yeah.
That's such a good way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't feel great to watch.
Right. No, it definitely doesn't.
But all the while, it's got its value, It speaks to them both as people. I feel like in season 2, we're seeing Don struggle with doing the work, because we left him season 1 realizing that he has wronged his wife. He has wronged his children. He needs to get back to, the promises that he's made to them. He's gone astray. And the carousel scene is him being like, I've got to really strive to be the man that I want to be. And at the beginning of season 2, he is being that person. But then someone like Bobby comes along and just throws him off. And I think it's super important to recognize that Bobby is basically the female Dawn. Like, she says a lot of things we've heard from him before, but for some reason it hits kind of different. And especially for him, he's never been met with a sexy female counterpart that actually it basically is like the temptation to indulge personified. And so he does. And then he has to deal with the ramifications of that. And it bleeds into his work life. So then there's no separating those two things, which is something he's valued very much up to this point.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I love that.
And then he ends up losing that. It seems like he really framed himself around the idea of, no matter what, I can still come home to this picture perfect life, until he can't, because he got sloppy, because he gave in just when he was getting a footing. And then he has to really reflect in on himself and think, well, why am I this way? What am I doing? You know, I'm being pulled left and right, and he has to evaluate which one is more important because he doesn't know.
Right. Yeah. Oh.
So seeing him go off to California and go off with the nomads and being given the choice by someone who's literally named Joy, and they're offering him, you can run away and disappear and never have strings attached anywhere forever. And then we see him finally make that choice to do the work and go seek the advice of someone. And it's just seeing him finally do the work of making the tough choice. That's what gets me about Dawn this season.
Girl, that was like a gourmet meal. I loved that.
Thank you.
Was so well put.
Well, thank you. I will say though, Don also does have to face the consequences of his actions work-wise as well, because he does dip out. You know, his escapism complex, I guess you could say, he constantly runs away from his problems. And then he comes back and realizes that the agency doesn't stop working just because he does.
Yeah.
So he does come back from this journey to a bit of a shock.
Which I think is a good thing. It's a little humbling, which, I mean, well, not really, because he still makes out with a ton of money. But, you know, it's good that he can see that things do operate without him. It doesn't all just come crashing to a screaming halt because he isn't there.
Agreed. So moving on, let's talk about Betty.
Let's.
So for my evaluation of Betty, I really just kept coming back to this, like the loss of innocence and the death of her naivety. Because a lot of season 1 is her recognizing that there's a lot about the world that she doesn't understand. And she thinks she's living in this wholesome, picture-perfect life, when in reality, even her best friend, neighbor, is aware that her husband is cheating on her because that's just the world that they live in.
Yeah.
And Betty's really having to come to those truths and battling at the same time the struggles of her father being ill in a way that people didn't really talk about back then. Like, it was just like, oh, he's not feeling well, or he's not himself. But that's a deep existential pain to know that your parent or someone that you once looked up to and felt safe with is losing that part of themselves.
Oh, God, yeah.
And she feels like she's kind of losing Don at the same time. Like, he literally up and disappears for a while. And we see her a few times in the series testing these boundaries with Glenn and with Sarah Beth especially. She's just pushing these little boundaries to see, well, the world isn't the way that I thought it was. And there's all this depravity around me. So let's kind of dip our toes into that and see where it takes us and see what lessons we can learn. And she ends up growing quite a bit from it as well. She confronts Dawn finally. Like, we thought it was ballsy when she told her psychiatrist that she felt that Dawn was having at least one affair, that he was generally unfaithful. And here she is finally getting up the gall to confront him face to face. And when he says she's crazy, she doesn't listen to him. And she spirals, and she looks a little crazy in her clown dress, but she's determined and self-reliant for the first time in a long time. And we're just watching her basically starting to actually accept that the way that she thought her life looked, this image in her mind that she'd built up of what her life looks like, isn't real, accepting that and trying to learn and explore what her life and her reality actually are.
Yeah. 100%. Love the points that you touched on there, especially the fact that, you know, she, compared to season 1, Betty, she is like this more self-aware Betty, if you will. I think that she definitely kind of derails on a bit of a downward trajectory. You know, from the beginning of the season, she's kind of confident and then just starts going downhill when her suspicions of Don cheating are confirmed. But like you're saying, she does, with that comes that sense of like, okay, well, this is my reality. I can't be naive to this anymore, which I think does a lot for her character and speaks a lot to her, you know, role as a housewife and her kind of having to figure out her way and navigate her way around this new realization. And her dad falling ill definitely is another emotional struggle for her this season. And, you know, it ends up being what's the word I'm looking for? A stepping stone, I guess, for this, for her and Don to have this like innocent enough act of comfort turn into just this huge life change for her when we find out that she's pregnant. So she really does go through some serious shit this season. And I love that we finally get to see her standing up for herself. I also love that she takes up horse riding this season. I think it's so great that we get to see like a housewife have some sort of, you know, hobby outside of the home. And it's also nice, like just for us as an audience to be outside. I think a lot of Mad Men is filmed indoors. Yeah. And I honestly didn't realize that until I read it somewhere and someone pointed out that a lot of the show is filmed indoors. And whenever it's outside, it's always like, oh. And I definitely
a really good point.
Right?
Yeah, I never
the
thought
stables
of that.
do that. Yeah. Me neither until I had seen that. It's nice visually to just get out. But yeah, like you were saying, she kind of starts to lose her footing, I think, when Dawn leaves. And then, of course, her dad gets sick. And then she starts sort of losing those anchor points in her life and experimenting with some Dawn tactics with, you know, Sarah Beth and the man at the bar. And I can't remember, is the mechanic thing this season? I feel like it is.
So,
right? Okay.
That was another thing is her, because she had, in that same episode, I believe, run into her old roommate from when she was a model. And her old roommate was a call girl.
Yep.
And it was her realizing that and I'm always still a little relieved. I find it refreshing that instead of responding to that information with disgust, the writers had her respond with intrigue.
Yeah, definitely.
So she did. She was like, oh, so there was another way that my life could have gone aside from marrying at 20-something, kids at 20-something, just a couple years after. Or I think she admitted to her psychiatrist in season 1 that she was actually pregnant with Sally right after she got engaged to Dawn.
Yeah.
So, yeah, went a little fast there. And yeah, she does definitely experiment with some Dawn tactics.
But she lands on her own 2 feet a lot more this season, and we see her stand up for herself. And
that's a fantastic way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it all ends up transpiring to, is just a Betty that is standing up for herself a lot more than what we've seen thus far.
Agreed.
So now we're going to move on to our boy Roger.
Your favorite.
Yes, God, I just love him. I can't see John Slattery without just being like, it's Roger.
It's Roger.
Like, he's almost like Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man sort of thing.
Yes.
Like, he is Roger. Like, it's weird. But, you know, he's a sly fox and he just becomes a multi-millionaire this season. And I really, I don't know what to say about him other than he just keeps getting what he wants this season, or at least that's what he thinks, right? He's adding to his list of so-called quote-unquote achievements, you know, his engagement to the 20-year-old secretary, Jane, his divorcing of his wife of 25-odd years, Mona, and he just sort of moves on after just really misinterpreting some drunk advice from Don, just takes the plunge and he just runs with it. He's like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to divorce my wife and marry the secretary. But I think that, you know, he's richer than he probably ever has been. And we see Bert in particular really question Roger this season, which is really interesting to see this like father figure almost be like, what are you doing with yourself?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Roger is a little insecure about that, I feel. And the moments that he shares with Bert this season, I feel are pretty significant. It gives us a deeper look into their relationship as well. And we haven't seen a lot of Bert in that way. So it was nice to see that this season. And I feel like his drunken chats with Don also just reveal this like longing for him to have a serious conversation with Don and get serious advice from him. It's almost like he looks up to Don in a way. I know that sounds weird, but it's just the impression that I get from him sometimes, like when he's seeking out this advice from him and trying to just prod him, like, what I want to know more about, you know, what you really think about this. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Right. And I feel like it's interesting that despite the life-changing heart attack he had last season, he's
2 heart
still
attacks.
living like, right. That's right. I forgot about that. He's still living like he's on shore duty. And what I love about this is I feel like they're showing that in a way you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That sort of saying where it's like, sure, he at that time was like, oh my God, I've got to change my life, blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't. He, if anything, you know, goes more into the Roger that's like, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want. His carefree and his risk-taking attitude really shines in this season. And I think it's kind of ironic that by the end of season 2, he and his daughter are both planning a wedding. It's just like, all right.
Oh my God. I never realized that they were engaged at the same time. Like, obviously they are, but I've never put that together.
Right?
Wow.
It's weird.
I wonder if Margaret was upset by that. We will figure that out in the upcoming season.
We will.
So I entirely agree with everything that you just said. And to put it into, I guess, the way that I had it written was, imagine yourself, like middle school, maybe early high school, and someone hits you with the hypothetical, hey, listen, you are the owner or co-owner of a successful company. You have a ton of money. You are privileged in every way possible. What do you do? And that's what Roger does, because that's what he is. Like, he's playing on easy mode in every way. And he can just go with all of his impulses, even, divorcing his wife of 25 years because, and I'll say, I don't think that he fully misinterpreted what Dawn was saying. I think that he needed an excuse. And he wanted something new because he had those heart attacks and realized, oh, life is short. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to have everything that I want eventually. I have to make it happen now, which in and of itself is an okay sentiment. But if the thing that you want is to fuck someone who could be your child while doing all the other things that Roger does, like, it's not great. So I feel like he used Dawn's advice as an excuse. And I think that especially when Mona comes in and she's mad at Dawn for it, you can really tell that there must have been a conversation there of, well, Dawn said this and Dawn said that. When he knew that that's not what Dawn was talking about. He meant like, you've got to do the right thing. You've got to evaluate the consequences, the good and the bad, and really think about it.
Yeah.
But instead, Roger was like, oh, follow my heart, which is in my penis. Okay, great. So I feel like what we're seeing is the worst or some of the worst that can happen when someone like Roger just really lets loose.
Yeah.
Because he was loosey-goosey before in season 1, but in season 2, he just no holds bar. Roger's impulses are Roger's wants and demands.
It's like in The Office when Michael Scott gets, he quits, but he's still there.
Yes.
And he's like drinking scotch around the office.
Yes. Oh my God. It's like that. Yeah.
I love that. Yep. Oh, Roger.
And
I'm
he ends
glad we
up a
both kind of saw
multimillionaire.
that. Yeah. Where it's like, well, he gets what he wants and he gets some more. Like, fuck.
Yep. God, speaking of the things that Roger wants, let's move on to Joan. Joan in this season. So she starts off all, blushing bride, doe-eyed. She's so excited about this amazing fiance that she has. She can't shut up about him because he's so perfect in every way. And then we just see that crumble over and over again. And she keeps trying to see the good in it and withstand, basically. And how do I even put it into words? Like, she's very steadfast in her goal of being a traditional housewife. But at the same time, she's struggling with Roger continuously undermining her in the workplace. So she's like, do I want to put my energy into just being a doting fiance, a doting housewife? Or do I want to put my energy into being the head office manager at this job that I love so much? And then to see herself replaced in Roger's life with another secretary. Like, I feel like Roger did spend a good deal of time making Joan feel like she was really special. And she wanted that. She wanted to feel special and valued by someone in some way. And she knew that what she was doing with Roger wasn't for life. And she was the one that ended it technically. But I think it really hurt her on a very deep level to realize that Roger could, quote, replace her, unquote, so quickly with not only just some secretary, but the secretary that was expressly combative with her.
Yeah. The Joan 2.0.
So I feel like this is the season of Joan just can't fucking win.
No, she can't. She definitely cannot. And, her handsome do-good doctor is actually an asshole in the, strongest sense of the word. Mm-hmm. He is a horrible person. And, despite the events that unfold, though, which we all know what I'm talking about, Joan remains engaged to Greg. And I feel like she is facing some intense identity issues this season. Yeah. Similar, like what you were to kind of piggyback off what you were saying with her in the troubles in the workplace, I suppose. We just see Jane representing this new model of Joan and kind of the other side of the coin, if you will. And although Jane does pose a lot of trouble for Joan, she's still very assertive toward her and she puts her in her place when it's needed. And it seems like she's finally where she's always wanted to be, which is engaged. But I feel like this season really leaves her questioning what she actually wants. She starts off pretty cocky, I feel like, this season. Like you were saying, that doe-eyed bride, and she's just kind of like flaunting her shit. But unfortunately, it doesn't last long, and she gets knocked down a few pegs when the media department is given to an inexperienced male, which is just like salt in the wound. And, it's difficult to watch her character just go through what she goes through this season. And I really wish that we had a bit more of an insight into how Joan processes the events that occur to her this season. Mm-hmm. But we don't. And I guess it's because she's not like a super duper, leading character, if you will. Like she's a main character, yes. But I almost wish she were like a Dawn level character this season because I'd love to get that like insight. Definitely. Yeah. But I think despite everything she goes through, she still puts on a strong face. And even though it doesn't come across super strong, though, she definitely is left questioning maybe what she really wants. And I think this scene in particular where Peggy is walking into her own office with her name on the door and Joan is just kind of watching her really summarizes to me what she goes through this season. Like, is she happy with what she has? She isn't as happy as she hoped she would be. And she's really just questioning what the fuck's going on in her life, which we've all been there.
Yeah.
And I can definitely sympathize with her a lot this season.
Agreed.
But yeah, poor Joni. It's rough for her. And we'll see as the seasons go on how she sort of, you know, evolves, of course, as we will with all of them. But yeah, the season's just tough for her. And segueing from Joan to our boy Pete. Pete. Let's see. You know, I got to say, Junior, you have given me, I always say this and I'm going to say it again, such a new respect for Pete. And I feel like for this season, he just goes through a lot of grief, a lot of like retrospect. You know, he goes down like this path of retrospect, wondering what he could have said or done differently when he learns the passing of his dad. And it really allows us, I feel, people can argue with me if they want, to see a more human side of Pete that we didn't get to see in season 1. And, you know, his fertility issues with Trudy also add to that like real life, those real life problems that we're seeing him struggle with this season. And I think that he does, despite all of his personal bullshit, step up where he needs to in the workplace. And he kind of, you know, puts on this new demeanor, and he's learned a lot about how to wheel and deal in the Sterling Cooper office and what it takes to, you know, keep your head above water in this like dog eat dog environment. I love watching his character this season. And for me personally, the fertility issues with Trudy really affected me a lot more this rewatch. And it never really occurred to me how much tension it could place on a relationship and on him as a character, and just how that sort of trickles through, you know, in the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, he and Bud are also amazing to watch.
Oh, I love them. Salt and pepper. I really love them.
But I really can't wait to hear what you have to say about Pete, because he goes through a lot of interesting things in season 2.
He does. And I feel like what we learned about Pete in season 2 is his yearn to always hit the ground running. He always wants to, people to think that he finds power in every situation. You know, like his father dies in a plane crash, and Duck challenges him to use that grief and leverage it against the client. And at first he says he's not comfortable with it, understandably, because that's kind of fucked up for Duck to even suggest. But at the end of the day, he's like, no, I want people to see that I want this job. I want people to see that I care. So I'm going to put myself in that uncomfortable situation and do it. And maybe he doesn't want a child right now. Maybe he's not so concerned with the fact that they've been trying for, what was it, 1.5 years and haven't conceived yet. But he knows, like, his wife and society expect him to have a child. So he's like, all right, I'll go to the doctor. I don't want to, but I'll do it. So it's a lot of him doing the things that people expect of him because he wants to do what people expect of him. I guess is the way that I would put it.
Yep.
But he doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Then,
that's so true.
Yeah. And then he fires his father-in-law as a client for daring to get his nose into his business. And I feel like that was the one thing that that was ballsy as hell. Because it was his breaking point. It was the straw that broke the Campbell's back.
Thank you. Oh my God, that was so good.
Thank you. I'm very proud of that. Way too proud, actually. But yeah, that was like where his he was like, no, I've got to draw a line. I cannot, like, I think he could take it from work or he could take it from his personal life, but he could not, like, expect himself to meet the needs of those two, like Tim or Tom, whatever. Trudy's dad's name is Tom, I think.
Yeah.
He was like, I could take one or the other, but not both at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was him really standing up for himself. And then there's the whole confessing his love to Peggy.
Yes. Let's not glaze over that.
Let's not. But I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like he, again, in a way is trying to meet this expectation of like having this grand fantasy and knowing the one is the one. We all like to think that we'll look someone in the eye one day in the grocery store, you know, across the oranges or something, and you'll see them and you'll be like, that's the person I'm going to spend my life with. But that's not how that actually happens usually. And I feel like that's him trying to meet his own expectations of having this magical, irresistible love. And Peggy's just the perfect person for him to focus that admiration on. And then it goes south and then he realizes, oh, I really just have to figure out what I want. And I think that that's very scary to him, that he has to actually, he has to do what he wants. And that means that he has to figure out what he wants.
Yeah. Look even more inward.
Yep. It's gross. It can be gross in there.
Oh, yeah. It really can be.
And then, let's talk about Peggy.
Yeah.
I don't ever mean for people to think that we think she's the least important character, because we go like Don, Betty, Roger, Joan, Pete, Peggy, but it's kind of like dessert. It's a little treat.
Yeah.
I love talking about her.
Me too. I could spend a whole episode just about Peggy.
And I really am interested in hearing your thoughts on this, because her experience in the season might hit a little closer to home for you because of what you've recently experienced in life. But God damn, Peggy in season 2, she has it's one of my favorite arcs. Like one of the most optimistic character arcs in the series. A lot of the characters in season 2 are struggling. They're sad, they're depressed, or even just bummed. But Peggy she's struggling, of course, but it ends pretty optimistic, and she's very self-content and aware of herself the whole time.
Yeah.
So we learn that she's unexpectedly given birth to a child that she did not know she was pregnant with, and that Dawn guided her through the postpartum trauma and kept her job safe, which is enormous. And his advice to her was that she keep moving forward and forget the troubling event that drove her to embrace her new role as copywriter. Like, his advice drove her to just be like, all right, focus on this. Narrow-minded, just get where you're going. Almost kind of like how Pete, what was his recommendation for the tobacco account? Lucky Strike at the in-season episode 1. You've got to get where you're going. And I feel like that's kind of Peggy's mentality this season. I just got to get where I'm going.
Yeah. Yeah. Love
and
that.
She even gains a new hairdo and a new office. Like, she's really coming into her own. But it really feels like, so she's trying to just fall headfirst into her 20s. Like, she's really trying to claim that freedom that she thought she would get by just moving on. And then she meets this charming priest. And he challenges her to face her secret head on. And I feel like she ultimately decides to risk her newfound friendship with Pete, because it can be awkward, you know, when you fuck someone at your job a couple times, they get you pregnant, you have their baby. You know, we've all been there. And then she became friends with him. And I feel like she was ready to really latch onto that. And she actually risked it to get to her true peace, which was telling him the truth, that she had the baby she let him know, and that was all she was supposed to do. And I feel like the whole time she was trying to just be like, no, I'm fine. No, I'm free. Like, I made the right choice, which, please don't get it twisted. I do feel like she made the right choice for herself. But you also have to, good choices can be painful as well.
Yeah.
And I think I think we're in this season watching her realize that. Like, just because you made the right choice doesn't mean you made a painless choice. And in the end, she comes out better for being able to recognize that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wonderfully put. Completely agree with you. I love how you said that she falls headfirst into her 20s, because and she does. She grabs it, she goes with it, and she's very, very focused. Peggy will just always have my heart. She really, like you're saying, comes out of her shell and value and acknowledges her own self-worth, I think, a little more this season, which creates this sense of confidence in her that reminded me of the confidence she had in the booth of the Relaxerciser commercial that she just quickly sort of lost in season 1. It's almost like she's grasped that Peggy and she's like, this is me now. But, after she had the baby, I feel like she dealt and is still dealing with a lot of self-doubt and not trusting her own instincts, like questioning whether or not she made the right decision. But she's slowly, she's slowly getting that back. And when we learn of like Don's visits to her in the hospital and the advice that he gave her, I think it really helps the audience understand the closeness of their relationship in this season as well. And I wanted to also mention Bobby's character, Bobby Barrett's character, and the effect that she has on Peggy, right? Like, she encourages her to, embrace her womanhood. And I think it's interesting to compare the effect that Bobby had on her versus Father Gil. So, Bobby is basically telling her to unleash the confidence within and use your womanhood to your advantage, if you will, whereas Father Gil encourages Peggy to unburden herself of her sins. And it's very confronting for her, but I think the combination of these two things.
That is really interesting.
Yeah, kind of like what really helps Peggy become the, newly discovered self-worth Peggy that we see at the end of the season. And I'm so glad that we're like finally here with her character. Like, we get these snippets of her sense of humor coming out too. Like, when she mentions to the guys that like, oh yeah, I slept with Don to get this office. Just like all nonchalant. And I just,
I love that line, by the way.
Right? It's just like you get to see like the Peggy that is hidden beneath, all of those frumpy clothes from season 1. And I mean that in the best way possible, but you know what I'm saying. And I will say, as a perspective of, a new mom and everything, what she went through, like just labor itself, like would have changed her as a person. And to know that she to deal with or to process everything that happened in the way that she does, it's a really big deal. And so I think Don's help in that would have been absolutely priceless for her. It's a huge, huge like impact, I think, more than I ever realized before. Like, yeah, but I love her, like you were saying. I agree. I love her arc this season. And I feel like it just gets better and better with Peggy from here on out.
Truly.
Yeah.
I love these guys.
It's so great.
So now that we've gone over our general character discussions, I say we move on to our favorites. Yes. And we have, Yay. My gosh. So I have so many favorite, all of these that we're going to talk about. And I just want to preface by saying I apologize for how many times I'm probably going to interrupt you to be like, oh yeah, that.
No, it's
Because
fine.
for the amount that I have, I know that you have a ton that I'm also going to agree with.
Yep. All right. That sounds good. I'm excited.
So
Kick us off.
for our favorites, the first one that we're going to go over is scenes/moments. So like little bits of a scene that maybe don't qualify as an entire scene, but like they're basically a scene. So some of my favorites were definitely the intro to For Those Who Think Young, the first episode of this season, where we see Peggy and Joan and Pete and they're getting ready, followed by, the intro to Maiden Form, featuring the three key ladies and the Infanta by the Decemberists, which I just love. I adore this intro so much.
It is really good.
I also loved, in no particular order, but I feel like these are generally in chronological order, Peggy correcting Lois on how to refer to Dawn.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Peggy giving the popsicle pitch, her first pitch on her own. Betty confronting Dawn after spiraling to find evidence of his cheating.
Yes.
Betty and Helen's heart-to-heart, in which Helen says the scariest thing is realizing you're in charge.
Ah, yes.
And not an exact quote, but anything with Joy, because I am just entranced.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, me too. Could watch her all day.
Kurt coming out as gay. And Salvatore's response also, but just the way he came out, I love.
How could I forget that?
The flashback of Dawn and Anna sharing Christmas together, and Dawn telling her about Betty and us getting the first glimpse of his love for Betty. Then Dawn's letter to Betty that he wrote in the hotel, talking about how much he loves her and hopes that she'll forgive him. And then Betty doing hot girl shit.
I love that.
And then I kind of had my moments in a separate category. So if you want to go over your scenes and then I'll do my moments and you can do your moments because there's so much.
I did the same thing. So I totally agree with you. And I actually didn't have any of those. So I'm glad you mentioned them all because yes. So here are some of my favorite scenes. Bobby schooling Peggy on the ways of working in a world of men. Basically anything with Pete and Bud in it. Just loved it. Ken arriving at Sal and Kitty's place and like Sal getting him to taste the pasta and like that whole thing.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Peggy's confession to Pete has got to be one of my favorite scenes like in the whole show. Dawn, Peggy and Bobby in the car. Just a meme, that entire scene. It's
honestly
great.
Yeah.
The dinner scene at the Jet Set's place, the Nomad's place.
Oh, yeah, Mexican food.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting scene. We see Dawn just like so in/out of place there, and it's just new, and I really like that scene. And last but not least, Dawn and Anna on her porch, just real talking it up. It's just such a beautiful scene.
Oh, I love all of those.
Yeah, right? There's so many. It's so hard to pick. Those were like the ones that first came to my mind. So those are what I jotted down. It's basically anything in this category because it's so hard. Like when you're looking at the season as a whole, right? It's just...
And you're like, the whole thing. The whole thing is my favorite.
Yeah, just all of it.
So for my moments, those parts of scenes, I had Peggy turning down the guy at Paul's party and then oversleeping because she's hungover. The Martinsons' coffee pitch where Kurt he's just like bopping his head along to the jingle.
I had that too.
Martinson. He's just like, and I love the memes that people make now where they put all these weird fucked up songs. Like I saw one with like Cupcake and all these like nasty raunchy lyrics, and it's so good. Oh, I love it. The iconic, "You're profoundly sad," followed by, "I'm not, it's just my people are Nordic."
Oh, yes. How could I forget? That is so iconic.
Father Gil playing guitar alone in his room.
It's a good one.
This one that I feel like we forget about very easily, but Peggy getting all dolled up and meeting the guys at the strip club because they keep having out of work meetings without her.
Yeah. She kills it.
Don baptizing himself in the ocean. The look on Anna's face when Don shows up to her house in California. Don and Betty slow dancing in their living room in 3 Sundays.
Oh, yes.
Bert wishing Harry a happy birthday during his baby shower.
That's right.
When Pete is preparing to provide a sperm sample and then it suddenly transitions into Roger playing paddleball.
Yep. I had Roger and his paddleboard.
And then the shot of the maiden form pitch with the Jackie and Kennedy. And then the popsicle one too. Okay, I'm done.
Love all of those. Yes. I'm not going to go over the ones that I had that were the same as you, but these are what I had. Pete and the chicken, of course, when he just...
Oh my gosh, yes.
Launches it out the fucking door. Basically, anywhere where Paul featuring his pipe appears, I just always get a cackle out of it when he just shows up with his pipe.
Absolutely ridiculous.
That's just throughout the season. This is one of my favorite moments. Pete getting super pissed off at Don for leaving him in California and then like immediately changing his attitude when Don praises him for it. It just always makes me laugh. And then,
God.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I had, plus the paddleboard and the Martinson's coffee song. But there were all the ones that you said. I completely agree with you, especially the Peggy showing up, looking all dolled up. That was such a great moment. So now we are going to talk about our favorite shots. So basically just any like camera shots or anything like that we really enjoyed. I'll go over mine real quick. So I'm sure you'll probably have some that are the same because some are just like, of course, but maybe not. Don walking into the water on the beach baptizing himself is just incredible. Love it. Thanks to you, Junior, Betty looking into the mirror at the mannequins. Whole new meaning. Never would have threw that in there. But now that I know what it means, it's one of my favorite shots from the season. So this is kind of random, but like the shot of the golf club when they first enter, I just feel like it's so pretty in there, and just like seeing all of these like hoity-toity people like all dressed up in like not evening clothes, but like golf
dressy clothes.
I don't know. I have this weird thing with like golf clothing. And pretty much any shot of the Nomad's home, like just that whole anything in there was just amazing to just see the detail they put into creating such a like modern looking, if you will, 60s sort of home in California. It was just such a, I hate using this saying, but I'm going to, such a vibe in there.
I love it.
Yeah. That's pretty much it for me. What about you?
Yeah, I should have taken better notes on the shots that I liked while we were going through episode by episode, but I did have 3. And I love all of the ones that you showed or mentioned as well. Especially, God, Don baptizing himself in the ocean is just burnt into my memory. It's so beautiful. So for me, I had the Vintage Beauty Parlor. Or at that time, I assume it was like a modern.
I figured you would have that, yeah.
Betty and Francine and the neighbors. I want to, it's like those pictures that you see as a kid and you're like, I want to be in that picture. That's what that is for me. I also had that shot of the whole team at Sterling Cooper standing at the ready for their meeting with American Airlines before they learn that it's for naught. And they're just all ready and they're all at their prime. They're at their peak hotness. They're fucking ready. And I love that shot. And then also the shot of Joan's bouquet of roses on Dawn's desk after Greg rapes her. And she just leaves the roses on the desk and they walk away. And it's just a shot of these roses and they're kind of looking like limp and hanging off the side. And it's like, oh my God.
Yes.
It's a powerful image.
It really is.
And so if we're done with our shots, I think the next thing to move on to would be our favorite songs and musical selections. And I had several. I basically wanted to list every song.
It's so hard not to.
I know. I boiled it down to 3. And
Okay,
the first,
me too.
I'm sorry, I could have tried harder to find it, but I might have got a bit lazy. But the song that's playing when Dawn and Betty are dancing in their living room in 3 Sundays, and he's like, he makes it sound like Christmas. And she's like, well, I love Christmas. I love that one. But I especially love The Infanta by the Decemberists and the way that's used because it gets me fucking pumped.
Yes.
And then Early in the Morning by Peter, Paul, and Mary. I love those 2 pieces so much. In the context, like everything about it is perfect and flawless in every way.
Weiner is God.
Yeah.
Love those. I love in particular the song choices. They're like just discussing them. For me, it's hands down Cup of Loneliness. I love the way they use that song I just love the song. Yeah, for me, that's what comes to mind like instantly. This is
such a good choice.
Bit of a weird one, but there's a song that plays during Ken's dinner with Sal and his wife, and it's called Piece of Cake by New York Jazz Ensemble. Not sure who that is. But I feel like it's so subtle, but it's so well used to like set that tone of like a dinner that's like romantic, but not really.
I'm going to have to look that up after this.
Yeah, it's just kind of this cool little jazz piece that's playing in the background. And then I love Telstar by the Tornadoes that plays when Dawn is on a plane to LA. Like
oh my God,
the end credits.
Yes, that one is so good.
Such a cool song. Yeah, so those were my 3. And you guys, we want to hear what you have to say about all this as well, because it's so easy to to skip stuff because there's so much. And last but not least, we're going to talk about our favorite costumes / sets. I mainly had just the costumes, and I'm not going to lie, it's so hard for me to remember the costumes. So I kind of had to just look through different pictures of the season that might have jogged my memory in one way or another, but this is what I came up with. Basically anything Joy is wearing. Love her costuming, hands down.
Yep, agreed.
Just so interesting compared to the other characters too. Betty's blue dress when they go to that ball with Jimmy, I can't remember what it is. Yep. And Don's dad's sweater in episode 3.
Yeah.
He's just got this sweater on. Betty's riding outfits, I always love looking at. And Kurt's turtlenecks.
Oh, wow.
Just all of them.
That is, that's my whole answer. It's just Kurt's turtlenecks.
But can't wait to hear yours because you're definitely the costume guru out of the 2 of us. So hit me with it.
So I feel like I might have held back a little too much on this section because I could have got real deep about some stuff.
I'm sure you could have.
But for the sake of time, I really tried to keep it sweet and simple. So for Betty, I had a few. Obviously, her Valentine's Day look and that frothy champagne-y dress, but also her little yellow bikini.
Oh, yes. How could I forget about that?
Hell yeah. And then for some reason, I just adore the blue dress that she's wearing when she's trying to convince Don that he needs to spank Bobby. And they get in that fight where she pushes him a little bit and he pushes her a lot. And then suddenly they realize this is not a healthy discussion that we're having. I love that dress. Couldn't tell you why. And then Peggy's black and white form-fitting outfit at work with that wide collar.
Yeah.
I just adore that dress because it really shows the contrast between the last time we saw her, in season 1, wearing this big sort of faded yellow dowdy getup because she doesn't realize she's carrying a whole baby. And now she's in this trim little black and white houndstooth outfit. Or it might be gingham, but whatever.
Love it.
I also love Bobby Barrett's gold dress that she wears in The Crash.
Mm. Oh, yeah. Her outfits are really cool.
Dawn's casual California look with the clothes that Joy gives him and then the clothes that Anna buys for him. And then last but not least, my number one favorite look from this season.
Oh my God, tell me.
Is Pete's short shorts.
How could I forget about the short shorts?
How could you forget?
The reveal is just too good.
Absolutely.
It's just like he stands up and the next thing you know, he's in fucking short shorts. Like, it's just okay, Pete. Oh, I love it. So we're almost through, guys. And we're lastly going to talk about our overall like themes and takeaways from this season. Now, it's always tricky, at least for me, to look at a season as a whole, and especially a season that you have so specifically delved into episode by episode. It's sometimes hard to stand back and look at it from like a, bird's eye view, if you will. I had two main themes and takeaways that I'll discuss right now. So a theme we see all throughout the show, of course, but in this season in particular as well, the person you show and the person you are, the mask you wear for the public was a big one for me this season. Some examples, when we see perhaps Don's truest self when he's with Anna, Sal, even, like we even see this with some of the side characters, we see more of his true sexuality as a man living in the 60s, his encounter with Ken, that whole thing. Betty and her, I hate using the word manipulative because it depends how you look at it, but her Don tactic side, I suppose, with Sarah Beth and the mechanic.
I mean, it is manipulative.
Right, yeah. And she gets a bit scandalous as well. So it's interesting to see that side of her. We definitely have not seen that yet. Roger shed his skin as a happily married man and exchange it for a 20-year-old. Not sure which is the real him, or not sure that he really knows either. I think he's going through a little bit of an identity crisis this season, if not on the surface, but if you dig a bit deeper.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Joan and her fantasy marriage not being what we think it is. And, she shows it to others as this perfect Prince Charming, but we know what it's actually like. So just like this, I'm sure there's a million other examples, but just this whole comparison of what you show versus what is actually going on. The second biggest theme that stuck out for me was transformation, death, and birth, particularly Peggy and Don toward the end of the season. We see Don being born anew and Peggy confessing to Pete, which moves her into a period of growth, not to mention like her new office, her haircut. And Pete is also transforming into more of a well-rounded businessman, if you will, which is really cool to see. And Betty's father's illness and her feeling as though she's an orphan, basically putting him in the ground already, that kind of thought of death, contrasting with her pregnancy representing new life and new beginnings, which acts as like a segue for her and Don to patch things up. So like that new era or transformation in their relationship. And then, a little less obvious, or maybe it isn't, but the death of Sterling Cooper as we know it and the birth of a new agency leading into season 3. So I'm sure if I sat down and thought about it, there would be more examples of that, but those were the ones that came to me pretty quickly and were the most obvious. But what about you? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts.
So not to repeat myself so many times, but beautifully put. Everything that you said, yes. To add to that, I also felt this really big theme of disappointment versus satisfaction. Because it feels like it's like, what happens when you realize that you're unhappy, but it's too late to turn back? And what do you do when you've disappointed other people. And I feel like almost every character this season ends up being disappointed by something. Betty is disappointed in her marriage to Don. Don is disappointed in his self-restraint. Pete is disappointed in his, marriage. Roger is disappointed in Joan. Joan is disappointed in Roger. It's all these things. Except for Peggy, who's honestly the only character who seems really content and satisfied with herself by the end, because the whole point, her whole arc was getting to that point. And everyone else's arc is realizing, oh, I thought I had it perfect, but it turns out I don't. And that sucks. And I just feel like, I think I said this before in reference to Peggy, but there are a few other, people, especially Dawn, where it's just like this really precious thing to understand that sometimes the right choice can still hurt really bad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then I feel like we're also seeing some characters almost getting to that point. Like Joan, the right choice would be painful. Like to leave Greg and admit that she was wrong would be painful. But she's not there yet. But we as the audience know that she's closer than not. Like we know that that's something that she needs to realize.
I love that.
And then there's also this idea of like the concept of lying, especially in terms of Dawn, how there are all of these frequent mentions of dishonesty and lying, and how he has this intense sense of unease whenever something like that is brought up. And then we see him being his true self around Anna, and the artificial nature of his version of Dawn Draper.
Yeah.
Is just, sorry, but it's just the amount of stress and anxiety that must be causing him. I think we're really finally realizing, he doesn't have it all together. He's not doing this easily. Like it's really eating away at his soul. Like it's kind of destroying him.
Yeah.
And then Betty having this facade of her own of being this happy housewife, but she really hates being, a wife and a mother, it seems. And the cracks are starting to show. And her naivety is starting to die. And that to me kind of ties into your thought of like the death of her father, but the birth of her, unborn child. And her naivety is really starting to dwindle here. She's realizing, I've had the wool pulled over my eyes. I've got to start pushing these boundaries and figuring out this world that I've been blind to for so long.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of people suddenly realizing, this is not working for me, or being very close to that point.
God, I love this show. I just
my God, I
discussing
fucking
it with
love this
you
show
as well.
God damn, I missed this.
Me too. I'm just here like,
yeah,
praising it in my fucking little
amen
closet over here.
Yes.
And guys, like I said earlier, we would love to hear your thoughts. By now, you've all seen season 2 at least. So, there's a lot to keep your eye out on too for the next season. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much wrapping it up. Did you have any last thoughts that you wanted to add, Junior?
Not that I can think of now, but I'm sure at 3 a.m. something's going to pop into my head and I'll be like, dang it, I should have said that. But that's per the usual, so.
Well, I guess with that, thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next time where we'll be discussing season 3, episode 1, Out of Town. Season 3, what? We'll be keeping our eyes on the post-episode discussion thread over on Reddit for your thoughts and opinions and anything you'd like for us to focus on in our next episode as well.
So just make sure to like and follow us on Instagram and Twitter if you use Twitter, and subscribe to our Patreon if you want to support the podcast. You can also reach us at shutthedoorhaveaseatpodcast@gmail.com. And geez, guys, thanks so much. For real.
Yep. From the bottom of my little madman heart, thank you.
Till next time. Bye, guys.
Till next time. Bye.
I'm losing my mind.
Oh
my God. Look at her elbows. Oh my God, they're beautiful. Oh my God, she's beautiful.
She's got little pants on today.
Shut the fuck up. She's got pants on.